40 below, the kind of cold that doesn't move, it waits. Inside a heated house, a man hugs two blankets, thick socks on the vent, hums like a tame storm, and still he shivers. No walls, no wires, just wind and the will to remain. Picture this out on a white prairie. A single tipi stands against the storm. The hide walls breathe, smoke drifts upward, a small fire hums back to the night, while an elder sleeps steady as stone, his breath rising like tiny ghosts in the dark. And then, silence. We call it comfort, they called it survival. Call it primitive HVAC, a living system tuned by wind and patience, not plastic and buttons. So how did they stay warm at 30 below when even fire struggled to live? The wind never waited, it hunted. Across the open prairie there was no shelter, no mercy, just white breath and soundless air. Yet a family of the plains stopped and began to build. The poles came first, hauled through the snow like bones of a future home. They read the wind like a living map, never pitching the tipi in the open. Behind a tree line, the forest became their wall. Under a cliff, the rock became a slow, steady stove. They looked for places that caught the sun by day and held it by night. Every shadow, every drift, every echo of the land told them where warmth still lived. And then, silence. Valleys looked gentle, but they lied. Cold air sank there, pooling like invisible water. A single mistake, and the family would freeze before dawn. So they learned to listen, not guess. They felt the way snow curved, the way smoke rose, the way trees leaned. It wasn't luck, it was memory. They even thought ahead to fire. Fuel wasn't comfort, it was currency. If there was no deadfall near camp, there was no camp at all, because out here, running out of wood was the same as running out of time. Back then, picking the wrong neighborhood didn't mean bad neighbors, it meant death by morning frost. So every tipi that stood against the wind wasn't just a home, it was proof that wisdom could build warmth. Picture this, a circle of packed earth at the center, a shallow fire pit roughly 6 inches deep. Flame sits low, not loud. Coals glow dense and steady, so the smoke is thin, and the heat is clean. And then, the shelter breathes. Cool air slips in at ground level through small base inlets hidden by hides and snow skirts. It crawls along the floor like a river you can't see, feeding the fire with oxygen, keeping the coals from choking. No rush, no roar. Just a slow inhale you can feel in your bones. Above the smoke flaps, listen to the wind. Open a hand, close a hand, the top of the tipi answers like lungs guiding the plume toward the night instead of back into your throat. One wrong angle and you cough, the right angle and you sleep. This is primitive HVAC, designed centuries before anyone thought of vents or ducts. No thermostat, no fan, no wire. Only poles hide wind and the memory of how air wants to move. Because warmth isn't a prison, it's a conversation. Here's the loop. Cold air in low, warm air, rising smoke pulled out high. The draft washes, the pit lifts the heat, and paints the hide walls with a soft, living glow. The tipi didn't trap heat, it taught it where to go. When storms lean hard, you trim the flame, shift a flat bank the coals. Too much fire and you feed smoke. Too little and the breath of the lodge turns shallow. So you breathe with it, and it breathes with you. Out there, engineering wore moccasins. Every pole angle, every flap tie, every snow skirt seam was a choice against frost and failure. And in the hush between gusts, you could hear it, the quiet rhythm of a house that knows how to live. The cold didn't always strike from the air. Sometimes it rose from beneath. The ground, silent, heavy, patient, stole warmth faster than any wind could. You could fight a storm, but not the earth. It waited, pulling the heat from your bones inch by inch. So they learned to build not walls, but layers between body and soil, between breath and frost. First came willow branches woven tight like ribs beneath the lodge. They flexed instead of breaking, creating a small space where air could rest. Air, not fire, was their first insulator. Still, air trapped between fibers warm as memory. Then came the dry grass, light, brittle, alive with scent. When pressed together, it whispered and sighed, turning sound into silence, cold into calm. It was the soft machinery of survival, the natural padding of a sleeping world. Above it, hides and furs, buffalo, elk, deer, each chosen with care. Fur side up to catch the heat, leather down to block the frost. Some were layered double with moss packed in between, forming the first kind of earth mattress. And on nights when the storm clawed hardest, heated stones were wrapped in hide and tucked beside the sleepers. By morning, the stones had cooled, but the people hadn't. And then, silence. It was design without drawing, logic without language. They used the bones of the land to soften its bite. A bed made not to rest on the world, but to rise slightly above it. You could call it nature's floor plan part, insulation part invention. The willows breathed, the grass listened, the hides remembered. Every layer worked like an organ in the body of the lodge, moving warmth instead of trapping it. And in the middle of the storm, the ground glowed faintly alive. They didn't lie on the earth, they built with it. And that difference, a hand's width of air, a palm's depth of knowing, was the line between life and death. The body that was the first fire. Even when the flame died, warmth remained inside the chest, hidden in breath and blood. They learned early in winter heat wasn't something you built, it was something you kept. Each night, they became their own furnace. No electricity, no blankets stuffed with feathers. Just people lying close-skinned to hide to fur, fur to air. A small circle breathing in sync, their warmth pooling in the stillness. It was the oldest law of survival: share what the fire cannot give. Layer by layer they sealed in heat like memory. First came the inner wrap, soft deerskin worn smooth by time. Then buffalo hides, heavy and dense, trapping the air between them. Outside, that a final cover of fur, thick enough to muffle even the sound of breathing. Every layer was a decision, what to keep, what to let go. And then, stillness. But warmth is balance, not excess. Too much movement, too much sweat, and it turns against you. They had a rule passed through generations: don't sweat. Work just enough to wake the blood, then rest before it spills heat away. A quick jog, a stretch, a whisper of motion, then stillness again. That was discipline. That was warmth. They didn't have sleeping bags rated for -30. They had instinct and each other. When a child stirred, someone shifted closer. When the wind oppressed the hide wall, they drew tighter, sharing air as if from one slow lung. Their rhythm matched the heartbeat of the storm itself. Steady, patient, alive. Call it body heat fi. The signal never dropped. Each soul a tiny generator, each heartbeat a spark. Together, they turned the tipi into a living furnace, one that needed no wood, no wire, no sound. They turned discipline into warmth. The wind cut first. The cold finished the job. Skin was the battlefield, thin, bright, brutally honest. Out here, warmth needed armor, not perfume. They rendered what the hunt allowed: buffalo, fat bear, fat deer, tallow, slow melted by the coals until it turned clear and heavy. A pinch of camp ash was worked in with steady hands, turning slick shine into a matte shield that bit back at the wind. Pulse points came first: cheeks, nose, wrists, the soft of the neck where the storm loves to feed. Not skincare skin armor. It sealed the heat, slowed the sting, kept the breath from freezing where it touched the face. And then, quiet. Picture a winter midnight inside the lodge. The fire is banked low. The hides hum with a small living glow. An elder wakes to the shuffle of a child and reaches for the tin. With 2 fingers, he lifts the grease mixes in ash and draws it gently over small skin temples, jawline, the thin wrists peeking from a blanket edge. No ritual, no speech, only the soft sound of survival being applied. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't sweet, but fat fills the tiny cracks where cold begins and ash gives grit for grip, so the layer stays put under breath and cloth. Snow can melt on skin and never win. Mist can freeze in air and never take the warmth it wants. Discipline did the rest. Too much heat and the layer runs. Too much sweat and it betrays you. They learn to warm the body, not drown it, to keep the coat thin, the seal complete, the breath slow. The engineers of warmth didn't wear lab coats, they wore hides. Because shields aren't always hammered. Sometimes they're rubbed on. It didn't smell good, but it kept them alive. And in the hush between gusts, that was all that mattered. Stillness, warmth, breath. Overhead, the teepee formed a quiet circle around breath and silence. Children and elders slept at the center where heat pooled deepest and the wind could not reach. Adults formed a living wall, backs to the hide faces toward the fading glow, a human equation for survival. They called it human geometry, the mathematics of warmth. The center was layered thick with hides and furs, soft enough to cradle dreams, yet dense enough to trap the night's last heat. The outer ring slept light-trading rest for awareness, listening for the shift of wind or the sigh of snow against the skin of the lodge. Before sleep, they checked the stones warm, not blazing, wrapped in hide and slid beside the frail. A hand tested the heat, another added a layer, and the tipi breathed as one again. No words were needed. Warmth had its own language. By dawn, the geometry had done its work. The center glowed, the rings stayed watchful, and the coals still lived under a skin of ash. Love wasn't just emotional, it was thermal. Outside, the wind howled like something alive. The tipi stood small against it, half buried in snow, but inside, silence held. Every sound mattered. Every shadow had weight. Beyond the firelight, dogs crouched in the drift's ears, twitching at every crack of ice. They were the night's first alarm, trained not by command, but by generations of survival. When danger stirred, wolf, stranger, or storm, their growl rolled through the dark like thunder under the snow. Around the teepee, the people shaped the storm to serve them. They built snow berms for walls soft but strong, catching wind and dulling noise. Their weapons lay within reach, bows, spears, blades cold to the touch, ready without panic. The storm roared. The lodge stayed calm. Inside, no one wasted breath. Each ear listened. Each heart counted the seconds between gusts. To live through such nights, they didn't need courage. They needed patience. Even fear froze too slowly to catch them. They didn't just survive the cold, they outsmarted the night. Dawn crept in slowly, soft as breath. Smoke rose from the teepee, thin and blue against the new sky. The storm had passed, but its lesson stayed. They didn't fight the winter, they followed it. Every move, every pause was made with respect, not resistance rhythm. Wind was not an enemy, it was a teacher. Cold was not a punishment, it was truth. They learned to listen, not to argue. We chase warmth with switches and wires. They found it in patience, in placement, in breath. Different tools, same pursuit. To them, survival wasn't defiance, it was harmony. Even silence had purpose. We build walls to keep nature out. They built balance to live within it. And in doing so, they endured. The snow buried footprints, but not wisdom, because knowledge weighs nothing and it can save everything. Fire, breath, silence. The fire is gone. Only a thin ribbon of smoke rises curling through pale morning light. The teepee stands quiet. No voices, no movement, just warmth fading into memory. Ash glows faintly like breath that forgot to stop. Footprints melt in the first touch of sun. The storm has left, but its silence stays. You can almost hear the earth exhale. No triumph, no loss, just balance. The kind that comes when everything unnecessary has burned away. They didn't chase the fire, they became it. When the fire fades, you do not chase it. You become it. Stay by the fire.